This is some comments on the JW Broadcasting January 2020. I guess it's the annual meeting. So, right in the beginning, Garrett Loesch is giving a little history to connect them with Bible people, connect them with Jesus. Moses led Israel out of the wilderness, out of Egypt, Joshua. But then Jesus is our leader. So he's the ultimate leader, right? He's perfect, etc. But they're still going to get to the governing body, right? So then it goes from Jesus to the Jerusalem Council, of course. And that's a governing body. A governing body was there, supposedly. It was a governing body of mature Christians and the apostles. And when they died, others were appointed to replace them. But I thought that when they died, it was the great apostasy. So, that's kind of weird, right? So then, of course, he's going where he's getting to, where all roads lead to the slave, the governing body, right? So then Loesch also says that the apostles, or governing body at that time, were both led by the Spirit and inspired. But today, the governing body is just led by the Spirit. Okay, so in Romans 8:14, just as an interesting side note, it says, "For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God." So that's just something to think about there. And even though they're not inspired, he said, today, recognizing Christ's leadership involves submission to and cooperation with his spiritual brothers and with other appointed overseers. Then he said later after that, Jesus provides spiritual food at the proper time through the governing body. Doesn't that kind of sound like inspired? If Jesus is providing new stuff or new interpretations through the governing body. And then he said, of course, they keep giving that caveat in between all this stuff. The governing body should not be called our leader, because Jesus said, don't call anyone your leader, even though you must obey them as you would obey the voice of Jesus. So it's just all this strange contradiction, and they're the only true channel on earth, channeling food from Jehovah, from Jesus. So, but they're not inspired. So anyway, just try to figure all that out. I got my morning voice. And then he talks about the word governing body was used for the first time in the Watchtower in 1944. But the fact is that in 1944, there was no governing body with collective decision making in operation yet. Okay, so it meant something else then, I guess, right? Now, the next part with Stephen Lett, I think, is really interesting too. He's talking about the relief ministry, and he just straight up says that the relief ministry is so important because through it, they make sure that the brothers have what they need to resume their spiritual routine. In order to do this, their lives and circumstances need to be stabilized so we can see their motive in this relief ministry so they can get back to work. It's wow, it's just so transparent and outrageous, really. And around minute 33, they start the whole building thing. Such a good part of this JW broadcast is glorifying their building projects. He quotes from Nehemiah 2:18, which says, "Let us rise up and build," a phrase spoken by the people of Jerusalem after, Nehemiah got the commission to rebuild the city walls. So, "Let us rise up and build," this phrase is repeated several times throughout the rest of the video where they talk about buildings. So they're just trying to give it a spiritual or biblical type veneer. The whole Nehemiah thing is just a stretch to try to get some spiritual connection. Like in the older days, they ranted against emphasizing fancy church buildings. Is their real estate scheme built on indulgences? Because they say you can have a good relationship with Jehovah doing stuff for the organization, and they present doing stuff for the organization, including buildings, as the highest and holy thing that you could do, where you should spend the most of your time and give your labor or money. Anyways, as I'm sure anybody knows who has seen their videos about their building projects, they just do the same thing over and over and over in these stories they tell, trying to prove that Jehovah is behind all these buildings. They set up some kind of problem, some kind of snag, some kind of delay, and then boom, something amazing happens. And of course it's amazing, and it proves Jehovah's backing. Like at one point, when there was no access road for the place they were looking at. I'm not going to go back and review all the details, which building that was, but then suddenly a city built an access road. And so that was Jehovah saying, this is the land where you should build a new branch. And all these comments about Jehovah's hand in the building projects, this is repeated over and over and over, that it's Jehovah doing all these things. Let's see. He said that those who work on the building projects show their thankfulness and zeal for Jehovah, thus making it like a super spiritual thing, a kind of higher thing that a Christian could do, right? Just like they do with all their other stuff in the past. Selling books door to door, spreading the magazines, standing at a cart. They do this by saying certain things are sacred service and certain things aren't. Like just the things you do in your daily life, even if you're doing them in a way that pleases God as a Christian, that's not sacred service. And when you think about it, most people's lives are really built of repetitive, mindless tasks. Almost everybody has to do a lot of that in their life. So they just want you to fill your life with Watchtower stuff, because to them, that's the only real value in life, is doing their stuff. So they make this big divide between sacred service and just everyday life. And it's also how you can climb that spiritual ladder in the organization. Then they go into a part that's talking about how making videos also proves Jehovah's backing. Okay, whatever. Loesch actually says at minute 1 hour and 7 minutes that Jehovah is speaking through his word and through videos, heart-touching videos, music, and artwork, presumably produced by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. That's all I got.